All right. Welcome to Rich Conversations. This is going to be another exciting episode. We are joined all the way from Bristol, England by Grace Broderick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Now, why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Grace Broderick. I'm adopted from China, but I grew up in Chicago my whole life. I went to Boston College for my undergrad, and now I'm here in Bristol, England, getting my master's in paleobiology. I am an amateur wildlife photographer, and I have sort of strong passions for conservation and sustainability.
Yeah, there's so much to dive into. First, tell me what is Bristol like?
Oh, I love Bristol. It's so vibrant and unique. It's really a college town. The whole town is really the University of Bristol. Um,
Okay.
and it's a small town. I mean, it's smaller than any of the cities that I've ever lived in, but it's still pretty big. It's like 400,000, 500,000 people. Um,
Okay.
but I love the feel of it because there's no skyscrapers, so it sort of retains a lot of personality to me. And it's very artistic. I'm not the most artistic person, but I definitely love Bristol for being able to see it. Like there's a Banksy that actually is right down the road from me.
Okay.
And a lot of the buildings just have these beautiful murals. And yeah, it's kind of a quirky city, but it's, I think, vibrant is the best way to describe it.
So when you were so you've lived in the United States and then you went to school in Boston.
Mhm.
What inspired um, the ambition to study internationally, and then why Bristol in particular over other areas or
Well, I've
universities?
always loved travel just in general. My family and I have always been very big on traveling and experiencing other cultures. But Bristol specifically, this master's program more specifically is an
Okay.
amazing program if you are into anything to do with paleontology. It's 1 year, so it's pretty fast, and it just you learn so much. It's a lot of taught courses, plus a thesis, and where you can really hone in on exactly what you want to do.
Okay.
But it was helpful for me because I came from a geology background, so I could do all the rocks and the earth sciences, but I didn't really know much about biology. And so this program was able to sort of facilitate whatever you can come into this program with any background you want, and it'll just help you flourish in anything paleo. It was recommended to me by many, many people.
Really?
Yeah.
What originally sparked your interest in paleontology?
Uh, I'm the story that I think I go with because I've loved them since I was six, so it's all a little fuzzy. But when I
When
was
you're
six,
saying
I
them, are you referring to dinosaurs?
dinosaurs, yeah. Like a lot of kids, honestly. But when I was six, I picked up what I remember to be a hot pink book, and it was about dinosaurs. Don't, and I couldn't tell you what the book was or what was even in it, but I became kind of obsessed from there because I went through plenty of phases where I was like, oh, I really like horses. I really like
Mm.
tigers, and well, every animal you kind of go through a phase. And so this was my dinosaur phase, and then I never grew out of it.
Wow, that's cool. And but you came from a background in geology, you said.
I did my undergrad in geology because I went to
Okay.
Boston College, which is a liberal arts institution. So it was really helpful to get a lot of great foundation I did environmental geoscience. That's what my major was.
So what is that like studying geology? Like what types of things are you learning about? I'm just off the top of my head, just imagining rocks.
Yeah, that's a lot. That was basically most of it. It's a lot of rocks. And I think I wanted to do that because I've had a lot of field experience in my life. Because I've been lucky enough to work with Dr. Serino at the University of Chicago for a long time. And so
Mm,
he was helping me a lot with, I did fossil prep and field work and that kind of stuff with him. And then when I got to Boston College, they have a really great geology or environmental science department. So that was a
okay.
great place for me. Plus, my interest in sustainability really flourished there as well. But of course, I've always wanted it to
Okay.
be directed back to dinosaurs. And no matter if you come from biology or earth science background, they both are really important in paleontology. So you can kind of start wherever you want.
Now, what's the difference between you said environmental science and
Yeah. Boston College had an environmental science department, and then I got my specific major in environmental geoscience, which was just geology plus sort of earth history, plate tectonics, that kind of stuff, plus climate change and past climate history and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I wanna get into paleontology, but maybe a little bit later. Right now, I'm like, because this is how I first came across you and approached you to be a guest on the show. But your photos on your Instagram of your wildlife photography are really cool, and they're all of birds. Like, tell me more about how you got into wildlife photography.
Well, thanks so much. I'm definitely still learning, but I've always been into just wildlife in general, sort of like any kid. If you ever watched Planet Earth at all, then you kind of just went from there. But it probably, in 2014, I had the amazing opportunity to go to Antarctica for a science trip. And you can't go there and not see all the incredible, unique animals and then walk away not being inspired. So that definitely inspired more of an interest in wildlife and conservation than I had before. So this was back when I was a junior in high school. And so throughout my high school career and then in college, I didn't do a ton with wildlife photography. I had a really lovely camera, but I didn't know what to do with it because I was too focused on sort of my studies and other stuff and paleo. So I had no idea what I was doing. But then senior year of college, I took an ornithology course, and I did it almost not as a joke, but I did it because I was like, oh, I like birds. This professor is trying out. This is the first time he's teaching an ornithology course. Me and some friends did it. We kind of were like, what if we made little vlogs about going on these little bird walks? Wouldn't that be so funny? We kind of did it because it was definitely going to be interesting, but we had no idea what we were getting into. And I had no idea how in love with birds and bird watching I would get from this class. So when I took this class, I just became obsessed with the bird watching because we'd go on tours and stuff. And starting the course, I couldn't tell the difference between like literally a robin and a chickadee. I didn't know anything.
Yeah, I think most viewers and listeners are in the same position.
Well, exactly. And I was like, because we were walking with people who were telling us, oh yeah, there's a yellow-throated warbler and there's a this and that. And I was like, oh, I have no idea how they can identify these. And now I can to some degree. I'm still not perfect, but that class is definitely what inspired a bird focus on my wildlife. Okay. And then COVID hit, and kind of one of the best activities I could do was going out alone into nature and watching birds and taking my camera with me. And the more I did that, the more I would look up how to do it even better. And so I improved lenses and that kind of thing. And the better I got at photography, the more in love I fell in it.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about like wildlife photography until there was this exhibit at the Field Museum. And as a member of the Field Museum, I always like to check out exhibits, and I'm there quite frequently. So I probably, of all the exhibits I've seen, I probably have visited this one the most of all the like temporary ones. And I probably went maybe 6 or 7 times because I was just so fascinated by these photos of wildlife and how these a lot of, I think they were all for the most part amateur photographers.
Oh, I love that.
These images were so spectacular, and I can't remember if it was like a contest or something. There's like a global wide contest, and you see these photos of wildlife, whether it's like taken from a creek in Tennessee or like Siberia or Australia or Spain or Alaska. It was just like so mesmerizing. And Could you describe a little bit more about the potential and the impact that wildlife photography can have on the general public?
Oh, I mean, sure. That's why I really kickstarted my Instagram, because I liked taking pictures of birds and it was a lot of fun. Um, and they're pretty and that kind of thing. But what my Instagram is really geared toward conservation conversation. So every
Okay.
post that I make, I try to write something about what the subject is and something about conservation, whether it's a scientific study that came out recently, like, oh, did you know blue tits are actually adapting very well to urban areas? And this is great. If
Mm,
you keep up your feeders, then you'll help the blue tit population, that kind of thing. Um,
okay.
so wildlife, and I think wildlife photography can be so powerful because it allows people to see, even if they're really common things, like a lot of the things I photograph are urban birds that everybody really sees every day. But I don't know if people really see them every day. The average person, like myself, before I got into this, didn't really care about the birds I'd see around until I
Yeah.
started seeing these beautiful photos of them and realizing there's so much more beauty to that thing that just sort of darts in front of you that you totally miss.
Yeah, especially in the city too. Like when people imagine wildlife photography, they're probably not imagining urban spaces and cities and the wildlife that exists within this own environment. And even myself, like in the city, it's like you're very selective in what you hear. Like I had
Mhm.
my parents visited one time and we were walking along the lakefront path right by like Lakeshore Drive. And my
Mhm.
mom's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't really hear you guys right now. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, all the traffic going by. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't even hear that. It's
No,
like,
really though.
and then like birds too. Like if I'm on, right now I'm recording this in a high rise on the ninth
Mhm.
floor. And sometimes I can hear the sounds I hear are really interesting. And if
Mhm.
you really cue into the birds, you can hear them. And it's like you kind of wonder why they're doing certain things or saying
Oh,
certain things.
it's so true. I think that's a big allure for me when I was getting into birds specifically. I wanted to know what these behaviors were. I wanted to be able to differentiate the songs. I'm not great at that myself, but yeah, I got a lot better over quarantine learning all the bird sounds, and it's so much fun. And it's true. One thing that limited my wildlife photography for a long time before I really got into birds was I really only posted photos when I went somewhere very unique. I only posted
Mm,
photos when I took a trip to Yellowstone or from my trip from Antarctica,
yeah.
or when I went to Norway with my family. And because I felt like, oh, those are the only pictures people really want to see, are these like crazy unique things. And that's just not true, because there's so much beauty in urban environments as well.
Yeah. And it's also like you're showcasing what's here at home to
Hmm.
the rest of the world, right? Like who are you trying to show the photos to? Is it people in Chicago and your friends? Or is it like, oh, we're connected globally
Hmm.
via these devices? I can show the world what it's like here in Chicago and the wildlife here, or
Yeah,
things like
that's
that,
actually what's
right?
been really fun for me moving continents. Um, because now I post photos, mostly now that I'm here, I post photos that I take here in England.
Mm.
So they're all common birds here, but the robins here are completely different from the robins in America because they're a totally different species. They're not even in the same family, but they're both called robins. Um, but they look completely different. Arguably, the European robins are a lot cuter. Um, but that's been fun because I've had people from America commenting about the robins that I post, being like, oh my God, those robins are so cute. How cool. And then if I post a robin photo from an American robin photo, I have some people from England commenting, like, wow, your robins look so different. They're so big. They're so differently shaped. They're not round.
Ah, wow. Well, okay. So then when so you're taking these photos, what is your process like when you like first go out and you decide, okay, I'm today for however many hours. I'm going to go shoot
Mhm.
birds, figuratively. Like, what is that process like?
Well, for me, because I'm not a professional at all, it's more of I try to go every morning. So I live very close to a park. So I take my camera with me when I walk my dog in the morning. That's another great thing about England is that she's trained to be fully off leash. So I can just let her do her thing and then I'm doing my thing with the
Oh,
camera. But
wow, interesting.
which is so nice because I never would have done that in the States because it's you can't hold a leash and a camera and all sorts of stuff like
Yeah.
that. But so here my routine has just been I go out every morning with dog anyways, so I get what I can get. But sometimes I do make special trips for myself to places that are known for other birds. And in that case, it's really just a matter of me setting very early alarms and getting my gear together and I've just really been enjoying exploring all these places and a lot of them are still pretty common areas and I see a lot of common birds but for me they still end up being very unique because I haven't seen them but all the people here have seen them before and they're common garden birds but I haven't so I'm still enjoying it immensely.
Wow. So here I'm picturing like you're sitting out in like a tree stand, or you're like digging through earth and to get the lying down to try to get this, but you're just going on like morning walks and you're
Oh
taking
yeah,
photos.
my birding style is my bird watching, bird photography style is very casual. It is just walking along to see what I see. There are a lot of places where I love just being able to sit somewhere and even if I don't see a bird in that moment, just sit there for a little while and wait and maybe a bird will come around. The park that I go to with my dog has a lot of birds, has a lot of little songbirds around there. So sometimes
Okay.
I'll find a place to sit and take bird feed. And I've had one instance with like bird feed in my hand and they'll come eat it out of my hand, which is just the most magical experience I've ever had.
Wow. Wow. So what do you think? Okay, so you're out there, you have a lot of experience interacting kind of with this ecosystem in a way. What do you think is happening between the birds? Like what are these like for example, like when I go back to Wisconsin, I'm from Wisconsin, I'll sit in the backyard and I'll just sit there. And in one this is like one part of the yard is a big yard because we're out in the country. There's trees over here, a patch of trees, and you
Mhm.
can there's noises from the birds coming. And then over here, like all the way across, there's like a woods, and they're making noises too. And it's almost like they're talking to each other. What do you think is going on between like birds and
Well, it definitely feels like that sometimes, and in some cases, they are. Like I remember sitting. My dad has a house in Ohio, and he has a backyard with feeders. And I remember one day I went out there, and there were a lot of he gets a lot of birds going through there, blue jays, cardinals,
okay.
chickadees, all the good stuff. And one day I went out there, and it got really loud with all the birds making various sounds, and then they all just sort of disappeared, and I was like oh, maybe I'm sitting out here and they don't want me around and oh well. And so I just sat there for a little while and then I noticed that there was a Cooper's hawk sort of flitting from branch to branch in the back. And that what I found from that is clearly all the songbirds were alerting each other, hey, there's something here. And then they all scattered. And I'm sitting there like,
Wow.
I don't know what's going on. But yeah, they definitely talk to each other. They definitely talk to within species, they're talking to each other. We're in springtime now, so there's a lot of calling for love. But
Yeah.
so right now is probably one of the louder times, which is exciting. And soon, hopefully, we'll be able to hear some of the babies start screaming for food constantly.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite bird?
I have a favorite bird. Back in the States, hmm, I think I really love the chickadee because it was one of the first birds that I learned how to identify the sound because they make two very distinct sounds. As the my ornithology professor sort of put it, it would
Okay.
be well, one of them it's named after the sound because it makes a like chickadee dee 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 sound. That's the chickadee. And then it makes another sound, which is like a, hey, sweetie. That's what they call it. And you could just sort of,
yeah, I feel like I can just like, I know that sound.
yeah, you can hear that little, like, it's like a whistle. I'm not great at whistling, but it's like just a, hey, sweetie. So that's the, those are the two sounds of chickadees. Probably my favorite bird there. My favorite bird in the UK is one that I have yet to see. And it's one that I really want to. It's called a bearded tit. And if you look them up, or if some, if anybody listening looks them up, they are crazy looking. They're very rotund. If you get them at the right angle, they're very rotund, and they've got what looks like amazing eye makeup, almost like eyeliner that just is gorgeous. And they look a little goofy, a little clownish, but I really want to see one and try to get a perfect round picture from the front.
Okay. Let's see. Is this it right here?
Oh yeah. There it is. They look kind of like clowns almost, but they're so dramatic looking. I'd love to see one. I think they're a little further north from where I am.
So what do you think, evolutionary wise, what are those black marks that go down? What is that for, you think?
Gosh, could be a lot of things. I know some people, it could be functional, the way that football players will put, black under their eyes. Most likely it's probably more to do with mating and looking the most attractive to another bird. So probably something more like that. But really, I mean, so many of these things have sort of multi-functions. Like cardinals, redness. You can tell sort of how healthy a cardinal is, whether how vibrantly red it is, and the females can see that too. So they're like, oh, okay, this guy's healthy.
Is there a bird you don't like?
No, there are no birds I don't like, because every time when I used to think that there was a bird I didn't like, I learned something incredible about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it. Like vultures. People are like,
oh yeah, those are ugly.
They're ugly. They're kind of creepy. They're omens of death, that whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I don't really like to see them that much either. But they're so incredible, and evolutionarily, that head, the reason it's so ugly is so that it can't have feathers on it, because it's sticking its head into dead animals. And if it had feathers, then all the gunk within the dead animal would be getting on it, and it couldn't keep itself clean. So that's to keep it actually very clean. And they're really helpful for the environment, because they break down the toxins that comes with rotting meat. So rotting meat can be really toxic for the environment and for a lot of reasons. So when they digest it, as it goes through their digestive system, it breaks down all those things that are toxic. And so they're a really important cleanup system. Interesting.
How important are birds to our ecosystems and environment?
Oh, the most. I mean, I do prefer them aesthetically to mammals, and although I do love reptiles and amphibians, but no, they are incredibly important. And a lot of them act as sort of biomarkers, where if you can tell an environment's doing really well because there's a lot of this kind of bird in this environment, such as herons. You can tell that this wetland is doing really well and it's not toxic, or something along those lines, because, oh, there's herons here and all the herons are healthy and they're coming back for more, as opposed to somewhere where it's like, wow, the herons there look really unhealthy, or there's no herons there. We should check the water quality because there's clearly an issue. Something like that. And that's just one of obviously many reasons. They're apex predators, they're prey sources, they're pollinators, they're everything.
Wow. Can you tell me about the birds in Chicago and kind of what the bird scene is like there?
It's so much bigger than I ever imagined. Because I had no idea until quarantine started, because I was in college during quarantine. So
Okay.
I got sent home to Chicago, and so I continued my birding there. And that's when I got involved with the Chicago Audubon Society. So I still volunteer for them, and I have done some. I'm actually, which makes sense. I help out with their Instagram and TikTok accounts. So
Oh, okay. I saw
and
one of your recent posts is from there, or you were
yeah, well,
you
I
posted.
help out a bit with their social medias, but it was because that's sort of the only thing I'm really okay at. But they facilitate walks, and there is a massive birding community in Chicago that I never knew. So I live in Hyde Park, which is where the University of Chicago is, and
Hmm.
I never even really thought about it. There's an island. Do you know the wooded island, Jackson Park
I've
Wooded
never been
Island?
there, but I hear about it.
Right behind the science and
Yeah.
industry, there's this kind of small island with trees, and it's got the Japanese garden. It's a beautiful place to just take a walk. But then if you take a slower walk, I've gone there and seen 30 to 40 different types of species in one day, because especially during spring.
Uh,
It's an incredible oasis, and there's tons of those in Chicago. You just wouldn't even notice. There's a place called up at Montrose Beach, Montrose
yeah,
Park.
that's close to me. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got that bird sanctuary there. Unreal, absolutely incredible. And of course, the beach has all the shorebirds that everybody loves, and the plovers. And so it's Chicago has so much more biodiversity than I even realized, because I was like, oh, sure, like everywhere has people who like birds, but does everywhere have the biodiversity that we do? And the answer is no. And I was like, I was trying to figure out, why does this city, this concrete city with little bits of grass here and there, why does it have so much biodiversity? And it's because the bits of grass that I'm referring to are really incredible. And it's a really important stop off point before traveling to and from Canada. So all these migratory species that go to Canada, they stop in Chicago either before or after, because they got to refuel before the really big trip across the Great Lakes. So Chicago is just like a huge international hub, basically, where birds from Mexico are going to Canada. It's O'Hare, basically.
Wow. Tell me more about this sanctuary in particular, because I know which one you're referring to.
Mhm.
When I go on like long walks, it's right there in that spot. What is it, just like a natural space, or things done to help birds, or tell me more about
Well, it
that?
is a protected sanctuary, so they don't want like bikes and dogs and that kind of stuff going through. You can still find birds in other areas, but this one is just a little more protected. I know they've been having some construction going on there, because they want to make it, they're making it more accessible, which will be really lovely. But
Hmm.
I don't know too much about the inner workings of it, other than that it is a bit off like the beaten path of just Montrose Park, because Montrose is a wonderful area, with a big soccer field and lots of beach space. But this is a pretty distinct, heavily wooded area. It's
Yeah.
got areas of woods, and it's got some grasslands. So it can really attract all manner of birds there.
Huh. Wow. Is there anywhere in the world that would be a dream to travel to and take photos of the birds?
Well, I kind of fulfilled one of my there's so many. Last summer, I had the opportunity to go to the Galapagos, which was definitely a major place that I wanted to go for birds, just especially because so many of them are endemic to that area. You'll just won't find them anywhere else. After going there, I've always wanted to try to figure out how to do some trip to like the Amazon to see all those crazy birds of paradise, and yeah,
Yeah.
those kind of things. But I did realize, and I've been to Australia before when I was much younger, and I kick myself now because I wasn't into birds or photography at all. And Australia
Okay.
has some unbelievable birds that I completely missed out on because I didn't care. But so I'd love to go
Wow.
back and see those.
Wow. Yeah, that is cool. That is really cool. What about in Asia? Are
Oh,
there like
I
really unique birds in Asia that you like to
definitely.
shoot?
Absolutely, definitely. They're beautiful birds too. India has a massive birding culture. Like there are tons of people who just love birds and bird watching and bird photography. I think half of my followers and the people that I follow on Instagram are Indian because they're so good. The birds are amazing and they're so interested. So I'd love to go there, and I think I'll have no shortage of guides because everybody. There's so many bird people.
Well, before we move on to dinosaurs, what
Mhm.
is what would you say you've learned about yourself by immersing yourself within this newfound passion and immersing yourself in nature?
Well, because I always thought of myself as kind of like naturey and that kind of thing. But this has shown me to really open my eyes like anywhere I go because you miss
Mm,
so many of these little birds, whether you're in an urban environment or even in a forest or anything. If you're not if you're not open to it, if your head's down looking at your phone or that kind of thing, you just
mm,
miss a lot of the natural beauty that's around. And I really love I hope that through what I photograph, I'm capturing some of that natural beauty. And the reason that I put conservation quotes or factoids or whatever with my photos is because I want people to be sort of similarly inspired like I am, where I see something so beautiful, I learn that it's either doing really well thanks to us or it's not doing very well thanks to us.
mm.
And it is inspired a lot of change in me, whether it's like personal habits or looking into ways that I can aid in any type of conservation, working with Audubon, that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just made me so much more aware of the natural beauty everywhere. And I think it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I love Bristol so much because it's such a, like I said earlier, it's the lack of skyscrapers is really nice and refreshing. And
Huh.
just feels more natural in a lot of ways.
Wow, that is cool. Shifting gears a little bit,
Mhm.
paleontology. Now,
Yeah.
can you describe what paleobiology is and how it's different from paleontology, or is it within it,
Yeah,
or
I'm still struggling with that, honestly, even though it's something I've been interested in for so long, and I'm getting my master's in it. I should really learn the distinction. But paleobiology, I feel like has I think paleontology encompasses more. It's sort of just the study of all life and things related to anything in the past.
okay.
And paleobiology refers specifically to the biological aspects of it from large level things like macroevolution, like huge changes um, from fins to limbs and that kind of stuff, to really small things like, oh, how did this one little species survive, or how did this one how fast could a T-Rex run, those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's all encompassed in paleobiology for sure because it has anything to do with life specifically. And um yeah, I think that that's the best way that I can describe it. But
Wow. What like technological advances are you excited about for paleontology?
ooh, I feel like we've already made so many that I could never have even dreamed of growing up. Because growing up, I read all the books of these big scaly dinosaurs being all scary and or lumbering and whatnot. And I think that's one big allure of birds is because with ancient birds, it's something that we've really come a long way in terms of technology, like just being able to discover feathers on birds. And so that helps
Mm,
us to completely relook at what they even look like. They don't, the fact that things even like T-Rex may have had feathers. And so some people argue it's not as terrifying, but I still don't want like a 30-foot vulture after me. That's not really fun to see. But Yeah, so for me in a lot of paleo, I think one of the biggest advancements, and it's something that I've been working with, is CT scanning. Um,
Okay.
because it's such a useful thing for paleo, because a lot of times we want to really look in depth at the bones and the bone structure, but we don't really want to start sawing into the bones. We don't want to be destroying these things to see it. So that's what CT scanning has been an absolute lifesaver, and that's what I've been working on for a couple of projects. Has You can reconstruct entire skeletons that have just been CT scanned. Like I did my undergrad, I did a thesis in conjunction with Harvard, and we were looking at it wasn't a dinosaur, but it was a Jurassic. It was still Jurassic aged, and it's a type of reptile.
Okay.
And we had CT scanned. It was in a tiny, tiny block of sand or rock. And instead of sort of breaking it open and looking at each bone individually, which would be nearly impossible because some of these bones were just the width of like a needle, you put it in a CT scanner and you can just move all the bones on your computer. You can just reconstruct it right there instead of sort of the old fashioned way, I guess.
Wow. What then do you think technology will allow paleontologists and people studying uh, fossils in the future? What technology do you think would be the most helpful?
Mm. Gosh, I don't even know because I am not the most tech savvy person. So I'm probably the very wrong person to ask on this. I remember growing up, I used to think how useful it would be to have something like a metal detector, but it detects bones instead of metal. Um,
Oh,
but that I think is most likely not feasible. And we have people, and we can kind of do that on our own if we know where to look. But I don't really know what exact like what more we're missing, because there's so many answers, so many questions in paleontology that are still able to be answered, which is one thing that's really
yeah.
exciting. Um, just knowing that there is so much mystery out there. But gosh, I don't know what the technological solutions are to them.
Huh. What are you most curious about in paleontology right now?
Ooh. Well, I'm doing my project on something that I never really thought of, and now it is really interesting to me. I'm currently doing my master's project on um, looking at it's a prehistoric bird skull, but what I'm doing is I'm taking the negative space inside the skull, which is where the brain would be. So
Mhm.
if I take that negative space, I can basically reconstruct what the brain shape looked like. And so I can see, oh, the olfactory bulb, it's an example. I'm not sure yet what the result is, but as an example, maybe it has a really big olfactory bulb. And so that means, oh, its senses of smell and taste were really good. And then it's got a really tiny visual portion. So it had really bad eyesight. That could tell us something about how it lived. Um, so paleo neuroanatomy, looking at the brains, is definitely something I never thought about with regards to paleontology, because I think it felt so out of reach, because brain matter just doesn't fossilize.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just something that felt so out of reach. But now that I'm working on something like that, I'm like, wow, maybe we can do this with so many animals, so many prehistoric animals. We can really reconstruct what types of behaviors they had based on their brains.
Wow.
Yeah,
Dinosaurs are so fascinating.
they
What,
are.
real quickly for listeners and viewers,
Mhm.
describe the difference between reptiles and dinosaurs and why dinosaurs are different.
Well, dinosaurs are technically, they are reptiles in a sense. They're reptiles, but so are snakes, and so are lizards. And so it's more like dinosaurs are cousins basically to snakes and lizards and those things. It's not, and when it comes to birds, it's not necessarily that dinosaurs are the grandparents of birds. They they birds are dinosaurs. It's hard family tree wise to kind of differentiate this. Um,
Yeah, it's a messy
it
family tree.
is a very messy family tree. And it's still highly debated. People that's phylogenetics, the sort of study of these massive family trees are still very ongoing. Um, Dinosaurs are reptiles, and they have a lot of unique functions that a lot of reptiles don't. It's sort of very, very basically, if you look at a dinosaur, they hold their legs more similar to like a human, where they're right underneath us. And then if you look at a lizard, you can see their legs sort of splay out to the side a bit more. That's just one of many reasons that they're different. And that's one reason, that's one of the many characteristics that people used when they were trying to argue that birds did come from dinosaurs. And so, yes, birds came from a lineage of dinosaurs. Obviously, a bird didn't come from a triceratops or a brachiosaurus.
Yeah.
They didn't come from those, but they came from another offshoot, like the offshoot that looked more like raptors. Wasn't raptors necessarily, but ones that looked more like that. So yeah, I think that's the best way that I can describe the difference, and the fact that yes, dinosaurs are reptiles.
Yeah. How do you think and feel about the Jurassic Park series, especially recently, with like hybrids and stuff, and just how dinosaurs are portrayed in films and size-wise and characteristics? How do you feel about that?
I don't know if this is a hot take. I adore Jurassic Park. Just the first one. As a paleontologist, I adore that movie. I think I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most accurate thing in the world, but I'm also not going to say that it matters all that much. And I think especially for the time and what they were working with, I think it was pretty beautifully done. And just in terms of as far as action movies go, it's to me one of the most just perfect action movies. They do a really good job. The rest of them are, including the Jurassic World series that's coming out now, they're fun to watch. I definitely love the CGI of Jurassic World. Jurassic World 2, I wasn't such a big fan, but I loved watching the CGI. The hybrid stuff, I almost feel like it's so far from paleontology anymore that I don't even watch it as a dinosaur, as an interested dinosaur. I watch it more like watching an alien movie, where I'm like, I don't study aliens, so I don't know. That's just how I watch them, because I'm so they become, especially with the hybrids, to your point, they're so detached from dinosaurs. And fact that I really don't watch it like, oh wow, that triceratops frill is not nearly tall enough or whatever. It's just like, oh, it's kind of like an alien. It's not, but
what do you think the biggest impact from the Jurassic Park movies has been on society?
Well, I would imagine that, and I would think that it would get kids at least interested in dinosaurs.
Including yourself?
It didn't I was already interested when I watched the first one. I was too young to watch it when it first came out in theaters or anything, but when I watched it for the first time, the only reason I probably watched it so young is because I was interested in dinosaurs. Like, my family knew that, so I watched it when I was pretty young. But it didn't spark my personal interest, but I'm sure that it sparked many people's, just to imagine living among them. For me, the sort of one of the most amazing dinosaur movies, documentaries is, did you ever watch or hear of the Walking with Dinosaurs franchise?
It's like the Disney one, right?
No, it's BBC, and it's it was narrated by Kenneth Branagh, but it was basically it was done in the way that a nature documentary would be, like a Planet Earth, except it was dinosaurs only. So it was height of technology when it was made, and gosh, I don't remember.
It's on one of the streamings. streaming services.
I'm sure it is. And they're actually currently in the process of making Prehistoric Planet, which is really exciting because it's going to be narrated by David Attenborough. Yeah.
I love all those things. I'm looking
I'm
right
so
now.
excited.
This is I happen to have this right next to me. I used to, in college, I would just like, I'd watch these all the time on the history.
Yeah, they're that's great. Yeah.
The prehistoric collection. We got, I keep this on my bookshelf. So we got, which one is which? They're all the same. There's like the Fight Club one where like raptors take on T-Rex.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, no.
See, yeah, that's basically what Walking with Dinosaurs was, but it was just the British version.
Yeah, this one's like yeah, oh man, I gotta rewatch these. There's like Biggest Killers, Raptors Last Stand, Ice Age Monsters, River of Death, Raptor vs. T-Rex, Armageddon, Cannibal Dinosaur, T-Rex Hunter, Gain Killers, Bloodiest Battle, Deep Sea Killers, Hunters Become Hunted. It's like
that's like, so fun. No, I think film documentaries became a huge part of my interest. And I actually minored in film studies when I was in Boston College because I am so interested in mostly documentaries and film editing. Definitely fully inspired by David Attenborough, Planet Earth, and any dinosaur documentary that I ever watched.
Wow. Some of them, like I watch them on YouTube. I'll go on YouTube and I'll like watch paleontology videos, and some the CGI it is hard to watch.
Yeah.
But overall, there's some really fantastic ones.
Oh, it's so true. It really is amazing. I can't imagine how people do it, but yeah. And that's why I'm excited for this new one coming out, which will be really cool.
Do you know when it's coming out?
Oh, I just saw it was circulating in my master's program, of course, because we're all about dinosaurs here. It's on Apple TV. That's where it's coming out. And then when is it coming out though is the question. May 23rd.
It's coming up. Wow.
Sounds almost like I'm doing a press conference for them, but I am really excited.
Wow. That's awesome. Do you have a favorite dinosaur?
Probably I worked on a little dinosaur, a very ancient bird called Confuciusornis, and I think that has become my favorite dinosaur because it's so unique. And I think one of the most unique things about it is that it has these what's been preserved are these two really long feathers that are kind of coming out of the tail of one of them, or not one of them, and some people are like, what are those two feathers and why are we only finding them in some but not all? And it's still hotly debated, but most likely it's one of the only examples of sexual dimorphism where the males have a clear distinction from the females, because you just don't see that in paleontology very often. But this species is one of the only ones that has shown very likely sexual dimorphism. And then they one study did an analysis of a number of bones, and what they did was they checked for a type of bone that's only found in female birds, and somehow they can see it even in fossils. And what they discovered is that the birds that had these long feathers did not have any of that female only matrix, but the birds without the feathers, some of them did. Now that doesn't mean it's definitive. They could be juveniles, they could be this or that. But in other words, the males, the ones with the long tails were definitively not female. That's all that. So it's very likely that they are a result of sexual dimorphism. Still debated, which is part of the fun. But it would be really cool if that is the case, and it's such a unique case.
Huh. That is really interesting. Huh. Do you think there's within our lifetimes that we will discover something so profound that it will completely shift our perspective on what dinosaurs were, or like what existed, or
How
the
they
way we
acted or
like,
something.
yeah, and like the jump in paleontology from like the late 19th century to today is just astronomical. Have we discovered
Absolutely.
and like do we pretty much know what we are going to know, or like 100 years, like within our lifetimes, are we going to discover something even more profound?
I think that's so much the fun of paleontology. And I guess it just depends. One thing that is still sort of yet to be discovered is exactly the coloration of dinosaurs that did not have feathers. Because feathers, we've been able to find exact pigments, because we can look at the microscope, like what the feathers look like under a microscope, and see certain components that say this feather was red, like which is amazing. Didn't think that would ever be possible. But for example, yeah, dinosaur skin coloration is still a something that's pretty undiscovered. And even more recently, there was a paper that came out that's got like, some of the paleontology community is like, "Ooh, this is a big deal," where they're splitting Tyrannosaurus into three different species. So instead of just being Tyrannosaurus Rex, there's now a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Gosh, I can't remember. I'm gonna butcher the other ones. Tyrannosaurus Rex, Tyrannosaurus Regina, and Tyrannosaurus Emperor, something like that. But basically, there's three species of Tyrannosaurus and not just one. So that's one place in which, and this is one study now. So of course, a lot of people who study Tyrannosaurus now are gonna jump on whether to rebuke that or not. But there's always, I think one thing that's very interesting about paleontology is, even if it's not headline news, there's always major discoveries and major backlash to major discoveries. So that's, and it's also likely in our future, we are going to find, hopefully, more specimens, and maybe we'll find something, maybe we'll find the next biggest dinosaur ever, or something incredible like that. But yeah, I think that's the fun of paleontology. We have no idea what we're going to find.
Is there a place in the world where we haven't really looked yet?
Not that I really know of. It's all dependent on the geology of the place. So of course, there are some places that you just know because of the rock formation. Sorry. You just know because of the rock formation, this place will not have dinosaurs. These rocks are from the Cambrian. So this, 300 million years before a single dinosaur ever existed. So there are places that we shouldn't even bother. But I have a feeling we've explored most places that could potentially hold them. The only thing that would hold that back really is things like cities, that we've built cities on top of them.
Okay.
Because I know there have been expeditions even to Antarctica for fossils and things like that. So we've definitely been to
got
we've
some
definitely
stuff
been to
there.
all the corners, at least, of the earth, but then there's places that may have it, but we can't access it.
Wow. Well, kind of wrapping up our chat on dinosaurs, how would you summarize how dinosaurs help humans gain perspective about the world and scientific exploration?
Ooh, well, everyone has different approaches, but one approach that I'm really excited to look at in the future is sort of a new and up and coming field of study. People are studying it now. It's conservation paleobiology. using the past, using species of the past to help us understand evolutionary trends, extinction rates, extinction trends. And since we are currently in the midst of a biodiversity crisis ourselves, it might be really important to look at how past species dealt with climate change to understand how we can best serve the ones that are dealing with it today. So that's sort of a more like heavy, specific way that paleontology can really help us in our future. But I think it definitely shouldn't be overlooked that paleontology, dinosaurs in general, can be a really wonderful source of inspiration to kids to pursue STEM, especially women, young girls. Especially because I remember growing up, dinosaurs were was a very male dominated interest. Like I remember my mom trying to get me birthday cakes and stuff, and they'd always be like 4 boys, and she's like, no, this is for my daughter. And they're like, are you sure? And of course that's definitely changing more, but definitely dinosaurs are so great as sources of inspiration for kids to get into STEM at all. So they serve that function to humans specifically, and they serve huge functions for conservation and biodiversity in general.
Wow. After your studies, what are you excited to pursue?
Well, when I finish here, I will be applying for PhDs in the coming years, which is exciting. Okay. But the probably most exciting thing that I'm doing after I finish is I've been invited to do to be a field assistant on an expedition to Africa with the University of Chicago. So that's going to be very exciting. And I've never been to Africa. That'll be my 7th continent, which is also just exciting for its
I was about to say, like,
its own right.
Which one are we missing here?
Where
in Africa?
It's in Niger, so sort of middle of the Sahara. And I'm very excited, and it'll be a 1 month. Well, the whole expedition is longer, but I'll be going for about 1 month, and incredibly excited because I've done a lot of field work and fossil digs and things, but I've never done anything that extreme.
Wow, that is exciting.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Shifting gears a little bit again. I was telling Grace before a recording, of all guests that I've had on, I have like the most questions for you.
Dinosaurs will do that.
I was curious if you have like 3 musical artists that have inspired you, or you draw inspiration from.
Musical artist. Ooh, I was not expecting that question. Well, recently, over quarantine, I have gotten very much into K-pop. That's been I would not argue that it's a inspiration in my life, especially since I just got into it, but it's a major source of joy for me. It gets me moving because the dances are so fun to do, fun to learn. It really gets it just gets me moving. What else? I grew up on show tunes, so anything from musicals have always been a really big part of my life. Wicked specifically was my favorite growing up, and is probably still my favorite musical.
Nice.
Other than that, I have a very wide range of music interests where I listen to basically anything. But those 2 are probably the things that are sticking out to me most right now.
Nice. Are there like 3 people or things that have influenced your outlook on life?
Well, honestly, David Attenborough, I mentioned him many times, is a huge inspiration to me, as I'm sure he is to so many people, just with the amazing conservation work that he does. Definitely an inspiration there. I've had not a lot, but really impactful and wonderful mentors in paleontology who have been basically champions of me. Most notably Paul Sereno, because he took a chance on me when I was 11 years old to work in his lab.
Yeah, that's cool.
and ever since, he's been such a huge supporter of just my general passion for it. And just a mentor for paleontology, just helping me figure out kind of what I want to pursue in general. He's been wonderful for that. And within paleo, I've been able to work with some amazing women as well who've been a huge inspiration. Like one of his former PhD student has been one of the most helpful people, like just helping me navigate anything that I need, where I'm like, how do I what do I wear to a conference? What do I, what's a cover letter? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
I think at least in the paleo community, those are huge staples. My parents are my two biggest supporters for sure. And they've, they never once, well, of course I was 6, so maybe I don't remember, but they never once were like, I don't know if dinosaurs is quite what you want to do. They fully supported this passion.
That's awesome.
For as long as I can remember. And I think that's been just, I couldn't ask for better.
Wow. Is there what are you curious about recently?
What am I curious about recently? I feel like most of my life revolves around birds. So I'm curious and just finding where the sort of missing birds are that I haven't been able to see yet. I do love lists, and I love listing the birds that I've seen. And for example, in Bristol, not in Bristol, in England, there's a woodpecker called a green woodpecker, and it's not uncommon. Lots of people on Instagram that I follow take pictures of it. They've seen it, and I just cannot figure out how to see it. So I am definitely curious to try to see one of those. But I think that's just anything within wildlife photography has been piquing my curiosity, whether it's I recently got a new camera, so I've been trying to figure out all the odds and ends of how that works, because it's a bit of an upgrade from my 12-year-old camera that I had before, which was taking amazing photos. It's everything that you see on my Instagram right now. But I was due for an upgrade, and now like I said, I'm not great with technology, so it's very complicated to me.
Wow. What's the process when you I think the term in film or whatever is dumping, when you dump files, say from your camera to your computer or phone. Is there a process you use?
Mine's really simple, because I don't have anything too crazy. I really just put it right onto my computer, and if I don't have space, then I pop it onto an external hard drive. I use Amazon Photos actually to store them for now. I had them all backed up on external hard drives, but Amazon Photos, if you have Prime, which I do, has unlimited storage, and it retains the quality. Yeah, it's incredible. Not for videos. It has limited storage for videos, but for photos, it retains the quality and is unlimited. So I have it there, but I also have them backed up elsewhere. But it's so easy if I want to just pull it up on my phone, go into my Amazon Photos app and be like, this is what I took. But so that's been hugely helpful in discovering that. I don't know. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if that's the best way to be storing them, because I do have them in other capacities. I don't delete photos from memory cards. They're still there. Some of them I put onto external hard drives, but I have been loving having them on that cloud where I can just access them.
How many cloud services are you a part of?
Really only that one. I actually don't use, I have an Apple, I have an iPhone, but I don't use their cloud because I would need so much storage. I imagine my monthly payments would end up being very, very expensive.
Wow. Huh.
But
I'm always curious about that. That's what I'm curious about recently is file organization, cloud services, and things like that.
I should be more interested in that because my organization is especially for photos, it works, but it is horrendous, as in I don't have any organization other than dumping.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I am trying to find different methods. I recently got into Adobe Lightroom editing,
Okay.
and people are saying that using Lightroom is actually a really good way to store photos. There's easy ways to do that, so that would be an avenue.
The last question I have for you, what are you excited for within the next 2 years?
Oh, so much. Africa for sure. I think that this upcoming trip is something that I'm just so excited for, because I was actually supposed to go on this expedition back in 2020, and then of course
Yeah.
we had a little issue, but this is that trip, which has been a long time coming, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it because he originally rescheduled it for 2021, and then here I am, or well, there I was in school, so I couldn't do it then. And I was like, oh well, I can't do it now, so it's my last chance ever. And then it was postponed again, and this hopefully is the time. So Africa is
Wow.
what I'm most excited for.
Yeah.
But in the next 2 years, I will be, the fingers crossed, I will be in a PhD program somewhere. So that's just a whole nother chapter of my life that I'm so excited to embark on.
Wow. That is exciting. And
Yeah.
thanks for coming on. This has been a great
Thank you for
conversation. I
having me.
appreciate it. Yeah.
This has been so fun. I love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.